Hello everybody, this is the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. So glad you joined me. My name is D.FINED. Today we're going to be speaking with Tracy Maylett. He is an author and the CEO of DecisionWise. We'll be talking about two books today, and Tracy's authored two of them: Engagement Magic, the 5 keys for engaging people, leaders, and organizations, and the employee experience. Tracy, so glad to have you with me. Thank you for joining the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the D.FINED Engagement BookCast. My name is D.FINED. I live in Augusta, Georgia, and today I'm fortunate and blessed to have Tracy Maylett with me. He is the CEO of DecisionWise out in Utah. What town is it in? What town is your headquarters?
We're in Springville, Utah. Here's our headquarters.
Springville, Utah. Sounds pretty.
It is, yeah.
Nice.
We're waiting for the spring part of this to happen.
There you go.
We're okay.
Yeah, Tracy, glad you came. Tracy is the author of 2 books, and this is the first time we've ever talked about 2 books in 1 hour, but we're going to do it, and we're going to have fun doing it. Tracy wrote his first book, and then he republished it, is Engagement Magic. You want to hold that up, Tracy?
I'm afraid my copy is written all over the top of it and all of that. But
that's okay. You're the star. So it says 5 keys to engaging people, leaders, and organizations. So that's his first book. And then he followed that a couple years later with the employee experience. You want to hold that up?
Sure.
I might ask you a few times to do that. So the employee experience is how to attract talent, retain top performers, and drive results. And you had a partner in that effort, Matthew Ride. He works for you, right?
That's right. Matt is the president of DecisionWise, and so he's kind of uniquely qualified to address this.
Good deal. So Tracy, tell us. Let me for our guests, I'm just going to read a quick bio about you. And I've been fortunate to know Tracy. You know, Tracy, I was counting down the years today. We met 13 years ago.
I was thinking about that about a half an hour ago, Doug. I thought, how long has it been? At least a decade. So we've been friends for a long time.
That's right. Yeah. And Tracy, you were hired way back when to rescue a senior executive at our company with your coaching, and that was interesting because you did a evaluation of her, 360 of their people. You talked to her people, and the process went very well for us as a company. So thank you again for that way back then.
Well, it was good to meet you way back then, and it's good to be speaking with you today, Doug.
Right.
Thanks.
So here's Tracy's bio, short bio. Tracy has a bunch of letters after his name, including an ED, SPHR, and SPHR, SHRM, SCP. Tracy is the CEO of DecisionWise, which for over 2 decades has advised organizations in more than 70 countries on employee engagement, leadership, and organizational development. As a consultant, coach, and academic, and a business executive, Tracy has worked with leaders across the globe. His work has been published in numerous academic and business publications, including the 2017 best-selling book, The Employee Experience, and of course, the Magic book. Tracy holds a doctorate in organizational change from Pepperdine, MBA from Brigham Young University, where he also teaches in BYU's Marriott School of Business. Tracy, that's quite a resume there. And besides that, people, he's a marvelous man, and he's friendly, and he's funny, and he has a good crew and a really going concern with DecisionWise out there. So great to have you, Tracy. So let's talk about Engagement Magic first, shall we?
Sure.
Yeah. Tell me about the data that's behind Engagement Magic and how it relates to what you do as a company.
Sure. It's interesting because we didn't set out to write a book. That wasn't our intention. What we really tried to do was, as an organization, we focus on the employee experience. So what creates that experience that would cause someone to want to engage, engagement being the outcome of a successful employee experience. And as we looked at this, we said, you know, there is a lot of information that's out there. There are a lot of data sets that seem to indicate that this group says it's about perks. If you go to a trade show, and it's kind of interesting, true story, went to a trade show and you have engagements listed at the top banner of these trade shows, each one of the booths, and they'll range all the way from fitness devices, that creates engagement, to vacations for your employees, to foosball tables and spas, to actual software. The idea of engagement is huge. And so we looked at this and said, what really does engage an employee? What causes an individual to want to give their heart, spirit, mind, and hands to what they do? And we looked at a lot of data being 40 million survey responses.
Is that all?
It's only 40 million and counting. My last count was 50 million, I understand, as of last week is where we got up to. It's a lot of data points. And we asked the question, what creates that environment in which people will choose to engage in what they do? It wasn't foosball tables. It wasn't even pay or compensation. What we found was a very simple acronym. And that acronym was MAGIC. We'll talk more about that. What's the title of the book is MAGIC. MAGIC stands for meaning, autonomy, growth, impact, and connection. When those elements are present, we tend to engage in what we do. We take these away and we disengage in what we do. This doesn't just apply to the workplace. I was teaching a class this morning, and these were eager college students, most of them not been out in the workplace in a full-time setting. And one of the things that they realize is this doesn't just apply to the workplace. This applies to life. I will engage in life when I find meaning in what I'm doing. When I'm growing, I will engage in its organization. It could be a community, a church group, it could be a family, it could be any type of organization I will engage in when those elements are present. So long answer to a quick question. It's based on 40 million survey responses that we found that these were the 5 key elements that create engagement.
Yeah, and DecisionWise is the place to, you performed all those surveys and you cut the data in every which way. Your database is huge, so your conclusions can be trusted. I typically, when I talk about the MAGIC, and I call it a model, I don't know if that's appropriate, Tracy, but when I talk about MAGIC, it's like, go no further. Go no further. If you could focus your group, your teams on these 5 things, that's plenty to do. That's plenty to do, and it's not given to employees as tangible things. It's actually helping them find meaning in their work, helping them be autonomous, being the kind of leader that's going to let them be autonomous and get to the end goal the way they want to, as long as they're getting there, in the amount of time given. So a terrific model. I thought about this, Tracy, and about, you're the CEO of a company. You have executives, your executive team. Do you think regularly about your executives and their engagement as it relates to the model, to MAGIC? Is that something that you have conversations once in a while with your people about that?
More than just once in a while. Obviously, this is what we practice. This is what we preach. The model was created not just as a cute model. It really was this information really does make business sense. It's not just about people feeling good. And so, we do practice that. My role as CEO is less about the day-to-day getting in and working with the clients, unfortunately, which I missed. It's a lot more of working with my team and being able to make sure that they have what they need. And they're also promoting that. One of the keys, and as you figured out in leadership, and you and I have had these conversations before, is that we need to be engaging leaders.
Sure.
Engaging leaders has kind of a double entendre, 2 purposes there. One of them is engaging as in this as description of me, meaning it's an adjective. I am an engaging person, although I'm not. You are an engaging individual. It means you draw people to you. But engaging is also an action. It's a verb, engage, where I'm intentionally reaching out and doing something to draw something to people. So in answer to your question is I have to keep that in mind all the time. I want to make sure that I have people on my team who are engaging in both senses of those definitions. So we talk about it regularly.
Good.
We're asking the question, tell me about your MAGIC today. Or hey, do you feel like you've given the resources that you need in order to make it succeed? And we're holding them accountable for making that happen in the rest of the organization as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, that you actually have training for your leaders and employees in the magic model. Um, you you know, ideally the managers or the leaders kind of get the picture of what that model is and those 5 keys that drive engagement, and they have to kind of take it on themselves, and then they start talking to their employees about it and seeing how they can manage that person to have those, I guess you could say, high scores in as many of those keys as possible. And Tracy, you want to tell about the self-assessment that you have available to anybody that wants it, the magic self-assessment or the engagement?
Sure. Yeah, it's assessments available to you. It's fun to take, first of all, to understand more about your engagement, but it's also there available for you. I'll make sure I get that URL for you. But
I got it.
If you've got that,
Yeah.
it's like assessment.engagementmagic.com, if I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But basically what it does is, in a matter of about 8 minutes, you can go in and kind of assess your own level of engagement in a particular role. Those results go to you. We do gather those as part of an overall database, but it's not reported to a company or anything like that. The idea is, if engagement is a 50-50 equation, like you were talking about, really is, they have a responsibility and the team has a responsibility. How am I doing in my responsibility to engage?
Yeah.
Because I, as a leader, can create the environment for you, but ultimately, Doug, it's your choice of whether or not you're going to engage. And this is an assessment of whether or not you're making that choice.
Yeah. I actually took that assessment with a job that I pretty much hated. And I thought in my head, this is a job, I'm going back to when I was there, and then what I'm doing now. And it was like night and day. And I don't think I was ever actively disengaged, where I want to throw a wrench in the wheel and break things, but I wasn't fully engaged, that's for sure. But when I got to test myself about what I'm doing now, it was like off the charts, just solidly engaged. Independence, autonomy, connection with people. It was really great. You just brought up something, that engagement is a 50-50 proposition, that a company has to provide that work environment that helps and sets people up for success to be engaged. And then what the employee has to be and do and think and try to aspire to for their own, they've got to do their part. And in your book, you cover some that's a solid lesson from your book. It's 50-50. Another solid lesson is you kind of put to rest that myth almost, that engagement is very, very rare. And if you have it, it might be 22% of your organization, and the rest of us or the rest of them are losers and lost. And I really appreciated that you don't see it that way. Your company doesn't see it that way. You want to explain a little bit about that? How we know what Gallup does. It's like you're 25 or 30% are engaged and everybody else is in trouble. How do you view that?
I think there are a couple things there. That type of logic assumes that engagement is a light switch. It's either on or off.
Mm-hmm.
But most of us aren't like that. Most of us are somewhere in that spectrum, given the circumstances. One day may be a great day. The next day may be a horrible day. And, we survey for a living. Our companies range all the way from companies of 400,000 employees to companies of 40 employees. And as you look at that, it's a snapshot of that particular day and going back. So what we're really trying to do is understand what really engagement is. So if you think about it for a second, and I read the headlines all the time, it's every HR presentation, leadership presentation about engagement. It starts off with 78% of your employees are disengaged, or 87% of your employees are disengaged. So the current figure right now that I'm hearing being perpetuated is about 15% of your employees are actively engaged.
Wow.
That means 85% are not.
They're saying.
So let's think about it for a second. Back in the days when we could actually walk in the halls of our building, which hopefully will come soon. By the way, I'm here in my office and we're actually getting some people coming back here very safely.
Thank goodness.
That means I have to pass 7 employees before I hit the 8th employee that's engaged. Now, that's not human nature. Our human nature is not to want to disengage. Think of it this way. When was the last time, excuse the language, when was the last time you showed up at work and said, I sure hope today sucks? Sure hope my job is horrible today. We don't stick around in those environments. So to assume that 87% of us are disengaged or whatever that number is, it's not right.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to understand is that engagement depends on certain elements of our job, and that most of us, our human nature is to want to engage. The manager's role then is to create the environment in which that person chooses to engage in what they do.
Right. So I think it'd be helpful if you told us a little bit about how you gauge uh, engagement with the different sort of the strata of, you have highly engaged, or you want to go through those four?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we look at people in general. Okay, so remember that it varies from day to day, but what we can do is through our questions gather kind of a general perspective, a general picture, the panorama view rather than a single point of view. So we want to ask questions about the magic pieces of it. Are you finding meaning in your job? Do you have autonomy, growth, impact, connection? So we're looking at all those, and basically from that, what we do is from that aggregate set of responses, we classify an employee at that person's current state. So this employee is fully engaged in their role. So that's the top of the model. This would be those employees that other organizations would say, oh yeah, this is my engaged force. Yeah, but they're always engaged. And many of those people could engage in a paper bag. They can engage wherever they are. They just bring that to the workplace all the time. Most of us don't fit in that category, which is okay. We have our strong and steady people. These are our engaged employees.
Yeah.
And that represents about 58% of the population, by the way. Most of us are engaged by the situation. If it's the right environment, we'll engage in that environment, and we're contributors. We really are. We want these people on our team.
You bet.
These are the people that some organizations would say, well, they're not highly engaged. Well, it's true, but you want these people on your team because they're contributing, they're doing well, they're meeting your expectations and going beyond. This is the bulk of our workforce. Then below that, we have the opportunity group. Our opportunity group is kind of like the swing vote in an election year. This is the group that could go either way, the fence sitters. And depending on the right environment or experience, they could fall off or they could go the other way. Then we have the fully disengaged group. And we find that depending on which country, which part of the world, by the way, we did these assessments in 70 different countries in 33 languages. So it's a lot. We find that 4 to 6% will never engage.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of effort in organizations trying to focus on how do we get that 4% engaged. We find that actually about 1/10 of those people will ever become engaged in their role. The best thing to do is identify that and help them out of the organization to a place where they can be engaged. That's how we classify those groups.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for that, for clarifying that. You have 4 distinct groups based on the data, and each, the top groups are strong and you want to keep them. And I love that opportunity group too, because you're not casting them aside, if you will.
Sure.
You actually hope that you're going to do what you can, and if they want to become more highly engaged, they have that choice. So I like that.
What's interesting about that group, Doug, and I want to make sure we cover it before we move off, is that's the group that gets ignored often. Wow. So the groups that get the attention are the fully engaged, because they're always out there, right? And then we have our highly disengaged, our fully disengaged people that are the screamers and really will never engage. Then you've got that middle child in there, which is that, and excuse the stereotype here, but you understand my reference here. It's the one that doesn't get the attention of these others, right? And they're the ones that actually can have the greatest sway in your organization.
Yeah.
They can move one direction or the other.
Yeah. Another key thing from Magic is the idea of the distinction between satisfaction, employee satisfaction, if you will, and employee engagement. And you guys do a great job of distinguishing those two things. You willing to talk about that?
Oh, of course, right. So satisfaction elements are those things often referred to in organizational psychology as hygiene factors. These are those elements that the possession of these do not necessarily create motivation or cause engagement to happen. But when these are removed, the lack thereof causes us to disengage or dissatisfy what we're doing, referred to as Herzberg hygiene factors. That's what satisfaction is. There are certain things that our work has to have. They're transactional. You give me this, I give you that. Compensation, benefits, tools, resources, and you know what? Even perks fit into that category.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times we'll be thinking that, well, why don't we just get them a foosball table and bring in lunch and all that kind of stuff? Well,
Granola bars.
Granola bars. We do granola bars, but it's not to engage people. It's because really there are certain satisfaction elements that have to be satisfied. Quick example of this one, we write about it in the book. We worked with an automobile manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And sorry to paint this picture, but they had an assault in their parking lot.
Oh.
We received a telephone call that said, hey, this is destroying our culture. Can you work with us? They had actually 2 assaults in a 2-week period of time. Safety at work is
Mm-hmm.
not something that engages you. You don't do your job because you're safe. I'm excited to work here because I'm safe.
Right.
But we take that away and it becomes a dissatisfier.
There you go.
Satisfaction are those things that don't necessarily cause us to do anything different, but I start removing those and all of a sudden I become very dissatisfied. Mm-hmm. Quick example of how this works with perks. So let's suppose that I have Taco Tuesdays in my company. All right, pretty cool. We all have tacos and company pays for it and we enjoy it. I love that. Doesn't cause me to behave differently. Doesn't cause me to give 111% versus 110%. But you take that away from me, and all of a sudden the company just took something away from me. I'm not very happy.
Yeah.
Even more so when the company down the street also has Fajita Fridays. Now I become really disengaged in my job. Those are satisfaction elements. Mm-hmm. We build on top of that. These are the things that cause us to dedicate our hearts, spirits, minds, and hands to the job we do. Those are the magic elements. Those are the things that cause us to do above and beyond work, to engage in discretionary effort.
Right.
Satisfaction doesn't cause us to do that.
Right. Right.
Did I paint that picture okay?
You did, man. It's almost like you wrote the book, Guy.
I'll talk to that genius.
Hey, before we kind of move on to your second book, I'd love to hear you, if you're willing, to just talk about the story of that gentleman with the T-shirt. I know you know what I'm talking about here. Maybe you know what I'm talking, but that was a really cool story, and I think it summarizes very well what an engaged member of a team brings to the table and what they've experienced in their job. They must have had good management, good leadership going for them. But share that story with us.
It happened a few years ago, actually, as we were about to finish off the book. Mm-hmm. And of course, engagement was on my mind. And being a consultant, I live and breathe that stuff. And I hop on this airplane. I can't even remember where I was going from. And I look, and the guy that I'm right behind, he has this shirt on. It's a gray shirt. And on it, it says, I'm part of a team building the world's largest indoor coliseum. So, engagement's on my mind. I'm kind of fascinated by this, and being the consultant, I have to ask what this is. So I wait till he sits down. He sits down right in front of me, and I said, excuse me. And all kinds of ideas are going through my mind. This guy must be, the CEO of whatever it is or whatever it was. And I said, what is the world's largest indoor coliseum? I won't put you through the test to see if you know what that is, but it's in the Philippines.
I was going to say that, believe it or not. All right.
Okay, well, I should have asked you the question. It is in the Philippines.
I would have looked good.
You would have looked. You always do anyway, Doug. So I'm talking to this gentleman, and he's telling me all these exciting things about this arena. He's telling me about the sound system. It was obvious this person had something to do with the sound and the architectural and the wiring and that kind of stuff. And so I'm thinking he must have been one of the key architects or one of the sound engineers that architected that part of it. We get talking more and more, and I asked him, well, tell me about your day-to-day job, what you're doing there. And he was excited about it. And he said, for the next 90 days, my job is to go around and put those switch plates on electrical outlets. So, you turn the switch on and off, or you plug it in. It's the plate that goes over the top of it. For 90 days, he was going through all day long, screwing 2 screws onto each one of those and moving on to the next one. That was his job. Yet it was so interesting that this gentleman was so engaged in his job that he wasn't just grateful to have a job. He was part of a team that was building the world's largest indoor coliseum. And it made me stop and think, What if everybody thought that they were part of the team was greater than this? What if everybody, even though they were welding or soldering little parts on a wire, understood that this was part of a pacemaker? What
Yeah.
if everybody understood that that child that I'm teaching will grow up and influence other people? And that's the real concept behind meaning in what we do and what we find.
Yeah, that's a terrific story. It's like, again, I kind of preface it. I think there's something good going on in that management team, or even that gentleman's supervisor or leader, that has that gentleman seeing the big picture and being invited into that big picture. It's his stadium, just like anybody else's. That was so cool. It's a great story. Hey,
I love it.
yeah. Um, where do you think what this is completely off the script, Tracy, but do you see when you do your own company's engagement surveys, um, can you share anything that if something in the magic model was not as strong as you might wish it was for your teams, and you see there's some work to do, would you be willing to share, like when you learn that, what occurred after that by your people as well as by your leadership team to want to move the needle on that?
Sure. Yeah. And we're a little unique in this area because, well, first of all, air the dirty laundry. We don't score within the top 2% of all the companies we work with on our engagement surveys. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is we have work to do. But part of the reason is our employees this is what they do all day long. And so they're so focused on engagement that they understand it possibly better than other employees in organizations. When you're a jeweler, you're going to look more finely at that diamond to see whether or not it's flawless or not, what the color is, et cetera. And that's the way our employees are. They live this every single day. We're looking at it with a microscope. So what that does is create an environment in which we have to be very careful. By careful, what it means is we see a lot of really cool things in other companies too. And it would sure be neat to be able to bring that over, but it may not fit our culture.
Right.
So when we see that there are elements that we need to work on, right now, we live in an environment where we're able to bring on very, very solid recent college graduates from top universities. Within this area, we have within a couple of hours drive 5 major universities that are just solid and really strong. So we're able to bring on that population. And quite often they process assessments for us and they manage our programs and they do an excellent job. But with that also comes the idea that they've just left college, this is their first job. And so sometimes they don't see what's out there. They don't know what a great environment is, what a poor environment is, what they see in front of them. So some of those areas where we have to really work is, as they've been studying for the last 4 years of their life, now they get into the workplace and are expected to apply what they've learned. They're not forced to grow all the time. And so they're used to having growth opportunities pushed at them. You know, you move from being a sophomore to a junior, a junior to a senior, and here's your curriculum. They don't have that anymore.
Right.
So they have to exercise a few things that they didn't before. One is autonomy. We expect them to now think and be entrepreneurs. And that's an environment that not all of them are used to. We expect them to own their own growth. While we give them opportunities, they own their own growth. So a lot of it centers around helping them understand that I now own this rather than things being pushed at them. And we focus a lot on that, Doug. It's a continual challenge, but one I love.
That's great. That's great. If you wouldn't mind holding up your book again, Tracy, the magic one, because it is Engagement Magic, 5 Keys for Engaging People, Leaders, and Organizations. And that's a book by my guest here today, Tracy Maylett. And let's move on to the next one. How's our time? Our time is, how about that?
You nailed that one.
We nailed that one. That was 30 minutes. Maybe we'll go a little faster on this one, but I want to tell you one thing I've done with your book. This is the employee experience, how to attract talent, retain top performers, and drive results. My last employer, I invited pretty much the leadership team, and there were about 60 of us, give or take. And 5 people took me up on it, but I called it a leadership book forum, and this was the book we used for our first book. And it brought a lot of great discussion, because I just kept saying in the book, Tracy, is like, this is not my company. We're not doing this. I was the HR VP, but it was just obvious that our company had real issues when it came to engagement and when it came to the experience that our people were experiencing. So this was almost like a text for me. Tell us why you felt like you needed to put a book out there about employee experience. And there was the money shot for my reading this, and then scanning it again before we talked. The money shot was this idea of building your company around your people. And you didn't say it that way, you said it better, and I can't find my glasses, but it was really making your people the center of the decisions that you make. And that's the experience. Your employees, if you're going to lead that way, your employees have a real rich understanding that whatever you're doing, they are part of why you're doing it, which is fascinating to me. And so tell me about why you wrote the book, the high points of it, what your favorite chapter, or anything you want to say about the employee experience.
Okay, well, let's talk about what the employee experience is. First of all, the definition is, I'm going to massacre this one, but the general idea is the employee experience is the sum of perceptions that we have about our interactions with the environment in which we work.
Yeah.
Now, notice the key word there is perceptions, which means that you and I, Doug, could walk into an identical environment and have a completely different experience. So I was teaching a class this morning, and we were talking about the Container Store. If you've ever been in a Container Store, it's exactly what it says. It's containers.
Yeah.
For me, working in that environment wouldn't excite me. And this is not an anti-container store. But for half of my class, that would be their dream. They would love to do that because they love organization, and they love being able to help other people find that organization in their lives. That's not me. So it's possible that we could both walk into a container store and have a completely different experience. Yeah. And one of the things that we realized is that these organizations that think there's a one-way approach to creating engagement aren't getting it. They're not realizing that it's very, very individual.
Yes.
The book starts off with a story, and it's an Indiana Jones story. And if you watch Indiana Jones, you realize that they're looking for the Staff of Ra, and they're looking for the treasure. They're looking for everyone's seen it, so I'm not going to ruin anything. They're looking for a number of different treasures that they're trying to find from the Nazis. And as they're trying to find one of the particular treasures, they realize that what's been happening is they've been measuring using the staff something incorrectly. The staff was incorrectly placed. And so the distance they were looking for this treasure was not there. So they look at each other, Indy and his counterpart look at each other, and they say something to the effect that they are digging in the wrong place.
Yeah.
They realize at this time the Nazis all this time have been digging for the treasure in the wrong place. And as we started looking at this, we're seeing this proliferation of companies focusing on the customer experience, CX. Mm-hmm. You go into a restaurant, and at the end of that restaurant, so your receipt's that long, but it's actually this long because you have a survey after it.
Yeah.
There's this massive quest to figure out how we create the ideal customer experience. And me and my partner looked at each other, and I said, Matt, they're digging in the wrong place. What's happening is they're putting all this effort into finding a treasure over here, not realizing that it's the employee experience that translates into the customer experience. Mm-hmm. We call that in the book the law of congruent experience. My customer experience will be a direct reflection of that individual's employee experience.
Absolutely.
So let's address it the right way. Let's focus on the employee experience in order to create that ideal customer experience rather than the other way around.
Yeah. It sounds like when I played football many years ago, my coach would say something like, we have to we have to do the fundamentals right, and winning will take care of itself. And that's almost sounds like, if you're working with your team to have a great employee experience, it's a day-to-day thing. It's never, the journey's never done and all that, but the customer is going to be brought into that even, right? That's another part of the customer experience that great workplaces, and I'm just going to think of off the top of my head, like Southwest Airlines. That employee experience is, I'm talking like I'm an expert, Tracy, but you're the guy. But that employee experience is fantastic usually. They hire for personality and then train for other things, and they start engaging their customers in the fun that they're having. And then the customers walk off the plane going, man, that was cool. They were so lighthearted and fun and friendly and this and that. So, when it was set up, when that company was set up, that was an expectation. We want people with personalities that are going to spill over for the customer, and the customer is going to actually benefit from the employee's experience. So, yeah.
Put it this way, every great customer experience lies downstream from a great employee experience.
Yeah. And those, boy, you are the leader. You're the top guy at a company. And I'm wondering, Tracy, because I've never been that and I never will be that, but I'm wondering if is it a driving thing in your leadership? Because people like Herb Kelleher and then Richard Branson, they say those things, if you put the employee first, you got to, they just, they drive it home, like, love your employees, put them first, and they're going to take care of your customers. That's your primary job, is to take, I don't know, the word's not take care, but is to really focus your energy on employees. And do you kind of take that into, is it a challenge for you? Do you sometimes forget? And you kind of get caught up in the hard stuff and the trouble that you got to solve and things like that, or is it, or as you as a leader, is it ingrained in you at this point?
Wow, that's a tough one because it requires introspection. Yeah, should we move on? Because you asked a tough question. No, this is
no, but I love that.
I answer that question.
That you're being transparent, and I guess, to me, it's like, do we believe that or not? And if we do believe it, then things follow from that. It's almost like
comes down to the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, employees will see through a front. They'll very easily see just the words and the mission statement on the wall. We talk about that all the time. Our book talks about some mission statements that are out there that really wouldn't inspire anybody to do what it is. And then the idea of aligning that, my expectation of what I'm getting, with what I'm actually getting. Expectation alignment is what we refer to that as.
Yes.
But you look at it, and employees will see through that. And there have been some business decisions that we made that were not good business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But they were great employee decisions.
Wow.
Sometimes we make non-business decisions that don't look good on a spreadsheet for the benefit of an employee, and it just doesn't come back to bite you. It really doesn't. So while I can't say I do that all the time, what I can say is our company's built on that. We write about it, we preach it, and hopefully we live that as well.
That's awesome. Interesting how you said you've made some business decisions that may not have been, like, if an outsider looking in, they might have seen it as, why the heck did they do that? Because of this, and this. But you did it, and wasn't that the best business decision to make? See, that's sometimes we separate this idea of what's a business decision, and that's got to be black and white and a sure thing, if you will, and yet taking a risk and going a different direction to help your employees, or whatever you did, those decisions in the employee's favor. ultimately, don't you think there was a payoff?
Oh, of
So it
course.
really was a business decision, but not technically data driven, if you will.
Not data supported. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, when my wife and I were looking at houses, we ended up putting pros and cons together, two
Sure.
houses to look for, and we picked the one that had the most cons to it. It's like it's like we there was so much great with this one house, and then our other house, this house that we ended up getting, was just we just we wanted it, so we wanted it, and it worked out great. So
That doesn't just work with houses. That works in business. It really does.
yeah, how about that? So I'm going to go back to, well, tell me, Tracy, I wrote this from the book. Explain employees' expectations have a life of their own. They're organic. And that's kind of scary. They have a life of their own. Their expectations of what they believe their place of work should be.
Yeah, right. Which is why I may not fit in the Container Store.
Yeah.
Somebody else may fit there. So we talk about in the book about the employee contract.
Yeah.
Which is actually 3 separate contracts.
Yes.
And so every relationship, a workplace relationship has it, a marriage has it, a family, a community, whatever. Anytime there's a relationship, there's a contract. And there are 3 parts to that contract.
Mm-hmm.
The degree to which I choose to engage, and that's why it has a life on its own, will depend on whether or not I think my expectations are aligned with the outcomes of that contract. So let me explain.
Sure.
The first contract is what's referred to as the brand contract. Brand, B-A-R-A-N-D. B-R-A-N-D. And the brand is, you look at Apple, you look at another organization, Google, they have a brand. It's a public image, a public face. They also have an employee brand, an employer brand that says, if I work at Google, here's what I can expect. And so that brand attracts you to that relationship. When you look at a marriage, happens in a marriage also. I'm attracted to this individual because he or she has this particular brand, the face they put. And my degree of engagement in that will depend on whether or not that brand is actually met. That will keep me and attract me to the relationship. The second contract is called a transactional contract.
Mm-hmm.
These are kind of the hygiene factors. So let's look at a workplace. A transactional contract is really made up of very explicit concepts. Sometimes they're actually in writing.
Yeah.
But at least we've talked about it. It's very, very clear. You do this, I do that. It's quid pro quo. You come to work for 42 hours, I will pay you $42,000 a year. You do this, you keep us safe, and then we in turn will give you benefits. All right. So it's a quid pro quo relationship.
Yep.
In a marriage, this could be something like, I don't know, fidelity, maybe one that it's clear, it's agreed upon. It could be roles and responsibilities. I do the dishes on this day, you do them on that day. Could be we both work and we both contribute our money, but it's an agreement.
Mm-hmm.
That's transactional.
Gotcha.
And most organizations are very good at focusing on the brand, putting that out there, and also the transactional piece. But the big one is this one. It's the psychological contract.
Yeah, I want to explore that with you. Go ahead.
The psychological contract is the stuff that we never really have talked about. It's not written down anywhere. It's not verbally. On day one, we don't sit down and talk about the psychological contract. It's the stuff that I expect out of the relationship and the stuff that you expect out of the relationship. That's just kind of assumed.
Yeah.
And that's what varies so much. So, Doug, if you and I work for the same company, you're my boss, you have certain expectations of me. One of those expectations may be that you're looking for someone who can come in and rescue this particular product because it's really not doing very well. You expect me to dedicate everything I can to make that happen and be loyal to that and provide me with ideas, kill it off if we have to, whatever it is. You kind of expect that of me. I go into that relationship thinking, now Doug's given me this opportunity. It's my job here really is to kind of do the best I possibly can on this one, but I have no skin in the game. What I'm really after is to get from this project to move on to another project, but I'll do this in the meantime. So we have expectations psychologically that aren't aligned. The degree that I'm willing to engage in that workplace depends on whether or not those 3 contracts are aligned. And That's why it varies so much from employee to employee. Let's give an example. We have two employees, Ingvar and Edvar. All right. So we'll just use those two employees. We use that in the book, and we journey them throughout the book. Now we have Ingvar, who is into the party scene. He's into the late night scene. He's single. And one of the things he likes about his job is he can come to work at 9:30 because he plays with his band at night. And, that's just what they do. So he has late nights and early mornings that aren't really appealing to him. They work for the same boss. They started on the same day. They've been childhood friends forever. But then you had Ingvar there, you had Edvar. And Edvar is a little different. Edvar has a family. Really what Edvar wants is to be able to go in at 7 o'clock in the morning, get done by 3 o'clock in the afternoon so that he can go and see his boys play soccer.
Yeah.
Big soccer fans. They work in the same environment. They have the same boss, they have the same job, yet their experiences are very different because of the psychological contract on those expectations. The key to this book, and this is what we try to bring out, is if you want to create engagement for Ingvar and Edvar, you have to know what engages those individuals. And that's the role of the manager or the leader in that responsibility.
Yeah. When I think of the psychological contract, and even I'm starting to, it's great that you covered that in your book. And obviously you are an academic. You're an academic too, because there's all kinds of literature and people, picking that apart, what a psychological contract is. But it's also, it's not well known in the general population of the workforce, if you will. And yet that concept isn't well known, but everybody's got it. Everybody's got one. Like I'm thinking about, wouldn't it be, most people would want their manager to tell the truth to them.
Right.
But that's not, that's not in your hiring paperwork, that the manager's going to have integrity and tell the truth. But that's what we expect. We don't want to be, we want someone with integrity. So when they, what do they do when they violate that side of the contract that I expect, that's in my contract, that my boss is going to be honest and not whatever, not cut corners and have integrity. When they violate that, it's like, it's a big blow. So I guess what I'm asking is part of that, the trend, and it's probably a very, very healthy trend, is a manager and their employees, part of the, probably a important part of an employee experience is that relationship that they have with their leader. And then as it's enhanced and as it's developed over time through meetings, you must know that one-on-one meetings, that's the rage. That is all the rage. But you know what? It needs to be all the rage, because I don't think anything else actually cuts it. When you really want to know your people and they know you, and the longer you are together, you have that psychological contract. It seems like it becomes more known to each other, right? As the relationship grows.
The reason I'm looking down here,
sure,
because I have some statistics here that are in employee experience.
Cool.
Based on these survey responses, that relationship between the manager and his or her direct report has more influence on engagement than does anything else. Yeah. So, you completed your engagement survey, and the top 8 people sit on the 40th floor, and they get together and say, what do we need to do to improve these scores? They actually don't have a whole lot of impact on it. They have some.
Yeah.
But that impact really happens at the manager level. So let me give you some statistics.
Please.
So first, when we look at those managers who are engaged in their role, we find that if from one year to the next year, if that manager improves his or her own engagement, their direct reports, the people who work with them, are 213 times more likely to be engaged in their jobs. So huge statistic. What is that? Because it rubs off? Well, first of all, as managers, one of the first things we can do as leaders is to engage ourselves. If we're disengaged, there's a factor in emotional psychology called emotional contagion. We write about it, and that one's in Magic. But it talks about how we rub off on the people that are around us, even if we don't think we do. And there's some interesting studies along those lines.
For better or worse, right?
What's that?
For better or worse?
Better or worse? If I'm a manager and I'm fully disengaged, 49% of my employees will be fully disengaged in their job. So that's pretty different. Other statistics, if I'm fully engaged in my job, then we see a 157% jump in the percentage of employees who are both fully engaged as well. So one of my first responsibilities as a leader that we talk about in the employee experience and magic is to engage myself.
Yeah.
Second, create the environment in which others around me can choose to be engaged. And the way that we find that, you just caught it right on, is I'm talking to people about it. I'm understanding the difference between Ingvar and Edvar. I'm understanding who likes to be in the container store and who doesn't like to be in the container store.
Yeah.
That happens at the manager and the leader.
Yeah, you know your people, and you know your people. Somewhere along the way, Tracy, when I've been doing these bookcasts, I was reading a book about management and some case studies and things like that. And I just came to the conclusion, I think there's 4 words. No, there's 3 words. The boss is everything. And you could go anywhere you want with that, but the point is, it's like in business and in leadership and in organizations, the boss is everything. Prove me wrong. Because I think it's, in a way, I kind of think it's profound in a way, you know, the boss is everything. Because if they suck, you know, whatever group they're supposedly in charge of is not going to perform well. But if they are doing their job and they're good at it and they're growing and they're engaged, just think of what their team can do with it.
Think about if you would apply that to, say, an organization survey. You just surveyed your employees and you're finding pockets of excellence and pockets of disaster.
Yes.
Some real hot spots. Instead of sitting on the 50th floor with 8 people in a glass office trying to fix all this engagement problem, the first thing you should be doing is going to that leader, because that leader has far more impact, and understanding what's going on with that leader. There are lots of ways to do this. 360-degree feedback is a great way to do it. Asking the employees is a great way to do it. But, you know, a good percentage of the time it comes back to what that leader is doing or not doing in his or her organization.
Right, right. Hey, on that, I kind of want to flip back to the first book, the magic book, because you were loud and clear about employees. Let's say data has been uncovered, you know, in an engagement survey. And it was so cool to hear you say, it's sort of like, give it, you know, wash your hands of it in a way and give it to your employees to address. You know, talk a little bit more about that. That's the whole part to me of engaging your people to work on engagement. And by allowing them or expecting them to get answers and recommend changes that will move the needle on whatever you found in the survey that you didn't quite like, put them on it, let them accomplish it. By the way, if you let them accomplish it, their engagement is going to go up. So that was so cool to me, Tracy, because fundamentally you said, it doesn't really have to be the leader's job to address all these engagement issues, because, by the way, they may not be the best people to do it. The people that, you know what I'm saying. So that's a great philosophy. It's not even a philosophy, but it's a belief that you're putting your people to work on the issue of engagement for your organization. And I don't think you can go wrong that way.
You're right. Let's look at philosophically at what an engagement survey is. So you're looking at the organization, and many organizations in the past have viewed that survey. They get the results and they view it as a management report card. So it's a report card on how well the managers of the organization, the leaders, are doing, how we're doing as an organization. That's not right. Actually, what it really is an organization report card. The organization is all of us.
Yes.
So number these are the ones that identified the issues. They're ones that can help us understand the way out as well.
Yeah.
Because the managers of the leaders, the top 8 people of the company, I keep using that number, top 8 people of the company are something that they're doing is blinding them to the rest of it, so they can't fix the problem. The people who are closest to the results can fix it. The employees are the ones that are talking to the clients and the customers. The employees are the ones that are working on the assembly line. They've identified the problem. They're in the best spot to fix the problem. Second, when they start realizing that, hey, this is not a complaint box, this survey, this is an opportunity to say, what can we do better? Then they start also taking some ownership for it as well. It's really easy in today's social media environment to anonymously throw out a negative review or comment because I can wash my hands of it and have no ownership.
Right.
It's harder when you are actually expected to be part of the solution as well. And doing that also creates engagement in the organization.
Well, that's exactly what I was just thinking, Tracy, is that, boy, if you did hand off, or however you describe it, hand off the issues, the engagement, improvement, the issues that need to be addressed by the employees, guess who's going to start having meaning in their work? Now, it might be a collateral assignment or something, but guess who's going to start having meaning when the leadership of the organization says, we want you to do it. And guess what? Who knows how their meaning's going to change. But there we go again, autonomy. You're setting them free to come back to you and your leaders with recommendations or ideas, and they're free to do, they're free. They're autonomous. And then, I could go on, right? Growth.
You got it.
They're basically learning how to lead. They're learning to take responsibility. That's all stuff that we need. We want our employees to grow that way. And then the other two.
Then the concept of engagement is not something we inflict upon other people.
Exactly.
Right. It's something that we choose to do, and we choose to be invited as part of it. So really, the reason why these two books we wrote the two together is because we have to create the employee experience that will result in engagement.
Yeah.
You need to understand what that is. The way we do that is conversations, managers, surveys, whatever it is. And then we plant the seeds, but we also have to cultivate the soil around them, and that's creating that environment.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever in your leadership, I'm thinking about the employee experience, and you cover the idea of design, design in your book, The Employee Experience, about how you have to have a design mentality to figure out, almost engineer how that experience is going to go, how you want it to go, how you believe it should go. That's a lot of design work. And I've often thought that, are there aspects of your work, Tracy, that you've put people on a design project to enhance the experience, the employee experience? Is that like I'm thinking of, just off the top of my head, like onboarding new employees. I'm thinking about how we run meetings in your company, how you run meetings in your company. I'm thinking about how you pick your benefits every year for your employees, things like that. Do you ever have like occasional projects where people are put to the task of analyzing a process and then kind of looking at how people are experiencing it?
Let's talk about one that we're all dealing with currently.
Yes, sir.
The back to work thing.
Yes, sir.
Back to the office.
Yes, sir.
Just despite the fact that work from home is going to be advantageous for a number of companies, the majority are actually going back to an office. So let's just be realistic. Despite the fact that there are a lot of good things with that. So what if you were to take that philosophy and create a back to the office design team?
There you go.
Their responsibility is to look at every one of these aspects of back to the office: physical environment, social environment, safety in the office, work schedules, all that kind of stuff. And you gather 15 employees and say, guys, solve this problem, because I'm not one of the employees that does the day-to-day stuff. Here are your parameters. The parameters are, we will be back in the office because that's the kind of work we do. So that's not an option. Another one is that we will not have special working conditions for different people. because we all have to be fair about this. So those may be the parameters. Inside
Right.
this box,
Right.
you design it and operate however you want to. Now think what's happened. You've gotten the views of from a group of individuals who are closest to the work, instead of me telling them something that's not going to be practical. You also have a team of ambassadors
Yes.
designed the program. You also have these ambassadors who are peers, and they say it wasn't designed by Tracy and the executives.
Right.
It was designed by my peers who understand. You're going to get a better plan. So in answer to your question, designing these experiences will actually serve lots of purposes, one of those being increasing engagement.
There you go. Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Boy, right on time, huh? You got that going right now?
Well, you nailed it.
Yeah, cool. Because that's just very cool to think that, and I imagine those ambassadors, almost like representatives, they're out there talking to their peers that may not be on that team, but they're getting input.
That's the idea.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Tracy, boy, I think I want to know, is there anything you want to add that I might not have asked you today that you really want to make, like punch it, like you want to make a punch to the millions of viewers that are going to see you and me talk? What anything like that?
Whenever I give a presentation or sign a book or anything like that, I always end with one statement because I think it's important to understand. And that statement is engagement is a choice.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that engagement is something that we can create an environment as an organization, but as individuals, they're the ones that choose. So the concept here is engagement's a 50-50 proposition. I, as an organization, can create the environment, but you, the viewer, the employee, it's your responsibility to engage in that organization because only you can make that choice.
Yeah, I actually think you sharing that and you believing that and you putting it in writing in your book, Magic, I think it helps leaders kind of take a like a breath that you think the results come back from the survey and it's all on you. And they need to know that it's not.
We get that a lot. They say, I'm doing everything I possibly can to create engagement. What's going on? And the reply back to that is, okay, are your employees? And it's almost a sense of relief saying, no, you've identified the problem.
Yeah.
I know what I need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tracy, this has been delightful. It's been informative. And I know that the people watching and listening gained a lot from you and what you're doing and the books you've written. And I really can't thank you enough for the time you gave me today on this Defined Engagement BookCast. By the way, engagement is part of the title of my BookCast. I think that it's cool engaging with authors. And really, thank you so much for what you did for us today.
My pleasure. Doug, thanks. It's always good to chat with you, and I appreciate this opportunity as well.
All right. We'll see you later, Tracy.
Take care. Thanks again.
How excited can a guy get? Next Defined Engagement Bookcast will be with the great Tom Peters. Tom will be here talking about his latest book, Excellence Now, Extreme Humanism. Have I told you all that I'm going to have Tom Peters on my bookcast next time? Yeah, I am. And I'm incredibly excited to speak to him. So join us, will you? If you'd like to hear more of these bookcasts, you can go to www.anchor.fm/Doug-Fine. All of them are there. You can learn a lot at these bookcasts. And if you'd like to go to my website, I am at www.dougjfine.com. Perhaps I can help you with my skills and abilities to help organizations get better at what they do. Thank you again for joining me on the Defined Engagement Bookcast, and we'll see you next time with the great Tom Peters.